everyone. Happy Saturday. Today is the Saturday right before Christmas, and I just realized that all of the recordings I've been doing, or I guess I realized last week, it stops me at 30 minutes. So I thought, because I went to go grab water a couple weeks ago, I thought that's what happened, but now it's twice. And so I can't really go over the 30-minute mark without uploading 2 videos. So what I'm going to do is just go as far into chapter 3 as I can for until I reach the 30-minute mark, and then we'll finish chapter 3 next week instead of trying to get through the whole chapter in 1 week. So thank you for joining me. My name is Michelle Raza. I am going to go over Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents by Lindsay Gibson, and we're continuing our series, so we're going to be on chapter 3. Okay, chapter 3. How it feels to have a relationship with an emotionally immature parent. In this chapter, I'll explore how emotionally immature parents handle relationships in ways that frustrate their children's emotional needs. As you probably already know, being raised by such a parent feels both lonely and exasperating. We don't get a vote on our earliest relationships in life. Our strongest bond is to our primary attachment parent, the one we turn to first if scared, hungry, tired, or ill. We may seek out others for play when we're feeling good, but stress or an urgent need will send us scampering back to that principal character. Ainsworth, 1967. The intensity of this early bond helps explain why emotionally immature parents can be so endlessly disappointing. Relationships with them can be hard to deal with, but when we are distant or separated from them, it feels like something essential is missing. Our earliest instincts prompt us to keep turning to our parent for care and understanding. Exercise. Assessing your childhood difficulties with an emotionally immature parent. So here, just like we did last chapter, there's some questions. So hopefully you can follow along if you've picked up your copy. If not, please feel free to pause the recording, go back, write it down. Like I said, I ended up having to do that for the Audible book when I was reading it through Audible. Assessing your childhood difficulties with an emotionally immature parent. Emotional immaturity shows itself most clearly in relationships, and its impacts are especially profound when the relationship is between a parent and a child. Read through the following statements, which outline some of the most painful difficulties emotionally immature parents cause for their children, and check off all that reflect your childhood experience. If you'd like to fill out the assessment for more than one parent or step-parent, use the downloadable version of this exercise available at http://newharbinger.com/31700. See the back of the book for instructions on how to access it. So here we go through all of the different examples and just go ahead and check each one as it applies to you. 1. I didn't feel listened to. I rarely received my parents' full attention. 2. My parents' moods affected the whole household. 3. My parent wasn't sensitive to my feelings. 4. I felt like I should have known what my parent wanted without being told. 5. I felt like I could never do enough to make my parent happy. 6. I was trying harder to understand my parent than my parent was trying to understand me. 7. Open, honest communication with my parent was difficult or impossible. 8. My parent thought people should play their roles and not deviate from them. 9. My parent was often intrusive or disrespectful of my privacy. 10. I always felt that my parent thought I was too sensitive and emotional. 11. My parent played favorites in terms of who got the most attention. 12. My parent stopped listening when he or she didn't like what was being said. 13. I often felt guilty, stupid, bad, or ashamed around my parent. I lost count. These aren't numbered. 11, 12, 13, 14. My parent rarely apologized or tried to improve the situation when there was a problem between us. 15. I often felt pent-up anger toward my parent that I couldn't express. Each of these statements is linked to characteristics described in this chapter. Your parent may not have all the characteristics I describe, but checking off more than one of the items suggests some level of emotional immaturity. Communication is difficult or impossible. If you've been trying to relate to an emotionally immature parent with poor intimacy skills, these interactions may have made you feel shut down, shut up, or shut out. Even if your parent is at the nicer, warmer end of the spectrum, he or she probably has a very narrow window of attention regarding other people's interests. You may have tried for years to find a way to connect, only to come away feeling invisible and unheard time and again. You've probably felt plenty of exasperation. Your parents' insensitivity guarantees it. As one person said about her self-preoccupied mother, she thinks we are so close, but for me, it is not a satisfying relationship. It makes me crazy when she tells people that I'm her best friend. Communication with emotionally immature people usually feels one-sided. They aren't interested in reciprocal, mutual conversations. Like young children, they crave exclusive attention and want everyone to be interested in what they find engaging. If other people are getting more attention, they find ways to draw attention back to themselves, such as interrupting, firing off zingers that get everybody's attention, or changing the subject. If all else fails, they may pointedly withdraw, look bored, or otherwise communicate that they're disengaged, behaviors that ensure the focus stays on them. Brenda's story. Brenda's elderly mother, Mildred, had always been very self-centered. After Mildred visited over the holidays, Brenda was exhausted. At our next session, Brenda looked spent and physically older. During that session, she offered this description of her mother. My mother is only interested in herself. She never asks me how I'm feeling or how work is going. She only wants to know what I'm doing so she can brag about me to her friends. I don't think she's ever really taken in anything I've said to her. It just doesn't register. We've never had a real relationship because the attention was always on her. She's never filled up my emotional tank. She doesn't care if I'm really happy, and she's really very dismissive of whatever I say. Having her around is nothing but work for me. It's like dealing with this superficial person who just wants me to do things for her. I don't know how she has the nerve to be so demanding. Although Mildred is in her 80s, her egocentrism was childlike. Brenda understood her mother's immaturity at an intellectual level, but still found herself getting angry with her. As she told me, I wish she didn't get under my skin so easily. I'm disappointed at how angry I get when I'm around her. During Mildred's visit, Brenda repeatedly tried to get her settled so she could get a few things done for the holidays. But within minutes, Mildred would be calling out to her, expecting Brenda to drop everything and bring her something. It was annoying to be repeatedly interrupted, but Brenda's strong reaction went deeper than that. The following section on emotional attachment helps explain Brenda's anger. They provoke anger. John Bowlby, a pioneer in studying children's reaction to separation and loss, observed that babies and children get angry as a normal response to being left by their parents. Sadness is an expected response to loss, but Bowlby documented that anger is also common in response to separation, 1979. This is understandable. Anger and even rage are adaptive reactions to feelings of abandonment, giving us energy to protest and change unhealthy emotional situations. In this light, Brenda's anger at her mother wasn't petty or irrational. It was her biological response to feelings of helplessness caused by her mother's emotional disregard. After all, feeling dismissed or unseen creates an emotional separation. For Brenda, it was as if her mother had repeatedly walked out on her. When Brenda understood that her mother's self centeredness was a kind of emotional abandonment, she could comprehend the depths of her anger for the first time. She wasn't overreacting. She was having a normal response to an emotional injury. And once Brenda understood where her anger was coming from, she could see herself in a different light. She had been a normal child. She had experienced the anger that any child would feel if a parent walked out or refused to respond. Sometimes, children of emotionally immature parents repress their anger or turn it on themselves. Perhaps they've learned that it's too dangerous to express their anger directly, or maybe they feel too guilty about their anger to be aware of it. When anger is internalized this way, people tend to criticize and blame themselves unrealistically. They may end up severely depressed or even have suicidal feelings, the ultimate expression of anger against the self. Alternatively, some people express their anger in a passive-aggressive way, attempting to defeat their parents and other authority figures with behaviors like forgetting, lying, delaying, or avoiding. They communicate by emotional contagion. Because emotionally immature people have little awareness of feelings and a limited vocabulary for emotional experiences, they usually act out their emotional needs instead of talking about them. They use a method of communication known as emotional contagion. Hatfield, Rapson, and Lee, 2007, which gets other people to feel what they're feeling. Emotional contagion is how babies and little children communicate their needs. They cry and fuss until their caregivers figure out what's wrong and fix it. Emotional contagion from an upset baby to a concerned adult is galvanizing, motivating a caretaker to do anything necessary to calm the child. Emotionally immature adults communicate their feelings in the same way, same primitive way. As parents, when they're distressed, they upset their children and everyone around them, typically with the result that others are willing to do anything to make them feel better. In this role reversal, the child catches the contagion of the parent's distress and feels responsible for making the parent feel better. However, if the upset parent isn't trying to understand his or her own feelings, nothing ever gets resolved. Instead, the upsetting feelings just spread around to others so that everyone reacts without understanding what is truly the matter. They don't do emotional work. Emotionally immature parents don't try to understand the emotional experiences of other people, including their own children. If accused of being insensitive to the needs or feelings of others, they become defensive, saying something along the lines of, "Well, you should have said so." They might add something about not being a mind reader, or they might dismiss the situation by saying the hurt person is overly emotional or too sensitive. However they respond, the message is the same. They can't be expected to make the effort to understand what's going on inside other people. In her article, Toiling the Field of Emotion, 2008-270, psychiatrist Harriet Fraud uses the term emotional labor to describe this effort to understand others. Emotional labor is the expenditure of time, effort, and energy utilizing brain and muscle to understand and fulfill emotional needs. By emotional needs, I mean the human needs for feeling wanted, appreciated, loved, and cared for. Individuals' emotional needs are often unspoken or unknown, unconscious. Emotional labor often occurs together with physical labor, producing goods or services. But emotional labor differs from physical labor by aiming to produce the specific feelings of being wanted, appreciated, loved, and or cared for. She goes on to explain that some people don't always realize they need emotional comforting. since emotional needs are often vague or subconscious. Other people might hide their need because they're ashamed to admit it, so helpers must offer comfort tactfully and obliquely, allowing the person to save face. Emotional labor is hard work. People doing this work must also keep reading the other person to know if their efforts are effective. Many roles and occupations depend heavily on emotional labor, and if it's done well, others hardly notice the effort involved. Good mothering is an example of this unsung labor, as are any number of the service industry professions. Mature people take on the emotional work in relationships automatically because they live in a state of empathy and self awareness. It's impossible for them to overlook the fact that someone they care about is having a hard time. Doing this work allows them to successfully navigate all kinds of interpersonal situations without stepping on other people's toes. Both at work and at home, emotional labor promotes goodwill and good relationships. Emotionally immature people, on the other hand, often take pride in their lack of this skill. They rationalize their impulsive and insensitive responses with excuses like, "I'm just saying what I think," or "I can't change who I am." If you confront them with the fact that not saying everything you think is a sign of good sense, or that people can't mature without changing who they are, they will probably respond with anger or by dismissing you as ridiculous. It's as though they think they're off the hook if others don't spell off their pain or difficulty in words. They believe that they aren't required to be tuned in to others' feelings. However, emotionally mature people are almost always sensitive to others, knowing this is simply part of having good relationships. For people who have empathy, emotional work flows easily. However, for those who are unskilled at empathy and find other people's minds to be opaque, emotional work doesn't feel natural at all. This may be one reason why emotionally immature people complain so much when others expect them to make the effort. They are hard to give to. Emotionally immature people crave attention to their needs, yet they're actually hard to give to. This trait has been called poor receptive capacity by researcher Leah McCullough et al., 2003. Emotionally immature people want others to show concern about their problems, but they aren't likely to accept helpful suggestions. They reflexively reject efforts to make them feel cared about. They pull others in, but when people try to help, they push them away. In addition, these people seem to expect others to read their minds and are often quick to anger if people don't anticipate their wishes fast enough. They dislike having to tell people what they need and instead hold back, waiting to see whether anyone will notice how they're feeling. The classic unspoken demand of the emotionally immature adult is, "If you really loved me, you'd know what I want you to do." As an example, one woman described her mother's habit of sitting in the den and waiting until a family member came back from the kitchen to complain angrily that the person hadn't thought to ask her if she wanted anything. Instead of speaking up about what they need, emotionally immature people create a malignant guessing game that keeps everybody uneasy. They resist repairing relationships. Problems are bound to come up in any relationship, so it's important to know how to handle conflict in ways that help the relationship weather the storm. It takes confidence and maturity to admit to being wrong and try to make things better. But emotionally immature people resist facing their mistakes. People who have been wronged by an emotionally immature person may start to think they're at fault if they continue to feel hurt by what the person did. Emotionally immature people expect you to take them off the hook immediately. It feels better to blame you for not forgiving them fast enough. If it feels better to blame you for not forgiving them fast enough, that's what they'll do. After a rift, many people will make what relationship expert John Gottman calls a repair attempt, 1999, apologizing, asking for forgiveness, or making amends in a way that shows a desire to patch things up. But emotionally immature people have a completely unrealistic idea of what forgiveness means. To them, forgiveness should make it like the rift never happened, as though a completely fresh start is possible. They have no awareness of the need for emotional processing or the amount of time it may take to rebuild trust after a major betrayal. They just want things to be normal again. Others' pain is the only fly in the ointment. Everything would be fine if others would just get past their feelings about the situation. So one of the things that I love about Lindsay is that she quotes John Gottman, and I'm a huge fan of John Gottman. So I'm not sure if we'll continue with Lindsay's second book after we finish this one, or if we'll move on to do one of John Gottman's book. And I may end up just taking a poll from the community to find out. I'm going to pause for a minute. I'll be right back. Continuing, so if you're following along, we're on page 57. They demand mirroring. Mirroring is a form of empathy and relatedness that mature people spontaneously give to their children. Sensitive and emotionally responsive parents mirror their children's feelings by showing those same emotions on their faces. Winnicott, 1971. They look concerned when their children are sad and display enthusiasm when their children are happy. In this way, sensitive parents teach their children about emotions and how to engage spontaneously with others. Good mirroring from a parent also gives a child the feeling of being known and understood as a unique individual. This isn't the case for the children of emotionally immature parents. As one man said regarding his mother, "She doesn't see me for who I am. She will never know me even though I'm her own child." In fact, emotionally immature parents expect their children to know and mirror them. They can get highly upset if their children don't act the way they want them to. Their fragile self-esteem rides on things going their way every time. However, no child is psychologically capable of mirroring an adult accurately. Emotionally immature parents often have the fantasy that their babies will make them feel good about themselves. When their children turn out to have their own needs, it can send such parents into a state of intense anxiety. Those who are extremely emotionally immature may then use punishment, threats of abandonment, and shaming as trump cards in an attempt to feel in control and bolster their self-esteem at the children's expense. Cynthia's story. Cynthia's mother, Stella, who was extremely volatile, expected Cynthia to mirror her every mood, like an emotional clone. When Cynthia decided to travel as a young adult, Stella exploded, yelling, "You're disowned!" and broke off all contact with Cynthia. She didn't talk to Cynthia for months, not even on her birthday. Cynthia summed up her mother's message as, "You wanted to be on your own. You left me. I don't want anything to do with you." After another episode of rage, sparked by Cynthia's plan to visit a friend in Canada, Stella cut off Cynthia's college funds. She told Cynthia that she was selfish for wanting to travel, saying, "What's the matter with you? Life isn't about having fun." Stella could only feel safe if Cynthia mirrored the same kind of narrow life she'd had. Fortunately, Cynthia had a strong personality. She put herself through college and became a flight attendant, traveling to exotic locations. But in the back of her mind, she still had the belief that if she wanted to keep any relationship, she had to appease and mirror the other person. She told me that she always feared people would react as her mother did, punishing her for daring to be different from them. Their self-esteem rides on your compliance. People who are emotionally immature I need to adjust my seat. People who are emotionally immature often only feel good about themselves when they can get other people to give them what they want and to act like they think they should. Given this shaky self-worth, it's hard for emotionally immature parents to tolerate their children's emotions. An upset or fussy child can stir up their anxieties about their own fundamental goodness. If they can't immediately calm their child, they may feel like a failure and then blame the child for upsetting them. For instance, Jeff remembered an incident from childhood when he asked his father for help with homework. When Jeff didn't understand the lesson immediately, his father yelled, "How goddamn stupid can you be? Stop being so lazy. You just don't try. Not surprisingly, Jeff was mortified and didn't ask for help again. What he couldn't understand as a child was that his father was fighting his own terror of being an incompetent father if he failed to help his son understand easily and immediately. His reaction wasn't about Jeff at all. For emotionally immature people, all interactions boil down to the question of whether they're good people or bad ones, which explains their extreme defensiveness if you try to talk to them about something they did. They often respond to even mild complaints about their behavior with an extreme statement like, "Well then, I must be the worst mother ever," or "Obviously, I can't do anything right." They would rather shut down communication than hear something that could make them feel like bad people. They see roles as sacred. If there's anything emotionally immature people are keen on in relationships, it's role compliance. Roles simplify life and make decisions clear-cut. As parents, emotionally immature people need their children to play a proper role that includes respecting and obeying them. They often use platitudes to support the authority of their role as a parent because, like roles, platitudes oversimplify complex situations and make them easier to deal with. Role entitlement. Role entitlement is an attitude of demanding certain treatment because of your social role. When parents feel entitled to do what they want simply because they're in the role of parent, this is a form of role entitlement. They act as though being a parent exempts them from respecting boundaries or being considerate. Marty's parents provide a classic example of role entitlement. Marty and her husband moved to a different city after Marty's husband was transferred. Not long afterward, Marty's parents moved nearby. Once in the neighborhood, her parents began stopping by unannounced and even walked into her house without knocking. When Marty suggested that they call first, her parents were indignant and cited their roles as parents to claim their right to drop in anytime. Here's another example. Faith had to ban visits from her mother, a real estate agent, because she insisted on making changes to the furniture and accessories in Faith's house. Even after Faith told her mother to stop, she protested that she should be allowed to do it because she was Faith's mother and a realtor, two key roles for her. Role coercion. Role coercion occurs when people insist that someone live out a role because they want them to. As parents, they try to force their children into acting a certain way by not speaking to them, threatening to reject them, or getting other family members to gang up against them. Role coercion often involves a heavy dose of shame and guilt, such as telling a child that he or she is a bad person for wanting something the parent disapproves of. My client, Jillian, whose family was rigidly religious, experienced a malignant case of role coercion. Jillian married an abusive man who physically injured her numerous times. She finally found the courage to leave him, only to have her mother insist that she return to her husband. Desperate for her mother's support, Jillian finally told her mother about the abuse. But in her mother's eyes, that was beside the point. Jillian now held the role of a married woman, and divorce was a sin. In another example, when Mason told his mother he thought he might be gay, she said he couldn't be because you're not a zebra. In her mind, the role of her son was firmly heterosexual, and if her son didn't see himself that way, he was as deluded as if he were claiming he was a different species. Insistence on complying with roles to this degree is a profound invalidation of a child's most personal and essential choices in life. Yet emotionally immature parents have no qualms about doing it because they aren't comfortable with complexity and prefer life simplified. In their view, not fulfilling a supposed role means something is wrong with a person and the person needs to change. Okay, so we have a few more sections here. But we're running out of time on the recording. So next week It'll probably take about 15 to 20 minutes to finish up. So we're on page 61 of Lindsay Gibson's book. I hope you pick up your own copy and read along with me. Audible works too, although that's the same as listening here. But like I said, that's how I first read it, and it really helped me. Really, I would say was life-changing. If you're not a client and you'd like to consult with us, please give us a call. Check out our website, www.findingyourselfsatx.com. I hope you guys have a great week. Merry Christmas if you celebrate. Happy holidays if you don't. Enjoy the time off. And I guess I'll talk to you again before New Year's. So not happy 2021 quite yet, but looking forward to talking to you guys again. And please check out our website, give us a call, and maybe we can help you out. Take care, y'all.